welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a rhubarb crumble from some rhubarb I've just picked from my allotment. If you've not already subscribed to the channel, if you could please do so and share it with anyone you think it might be useful, as the aim is to help and inspire people to grow and cook their own fruit and vegetables. The first thing we need to do is turn the oven on. So turn it on to gas mark 5, that can be warming up. I've got about a kilo of rhubarb here. Don't have to be really specific about it. So if we chop it up, and we're going to put it in this bowl with some honey and some orange juice. So the recipe I've taken this from is from a Jamie Oliver book. So it's called Jamie at Home, Cook Your Way to the Good Life, which is pretty awesome. He uses lots of recipes in there from stuff you've got from your allotment. So it's a really good book to use. So I'm not following it specifically to the letter, so it's my adaptation of it, but I'd still recommend the book. So if you get your rhubarb, cut the tops and the bottoms off. You cut them into chunks. There's no real art to this. Just need to chop it all up into bits, put it in the bowl. It's a really, really tasty recipe. I've cooked this recipe so many times. It's a little bit healthier than using sugar, using honey. And also the honey is from a local beekeeper. So it's always good to use local ingredients, even if you haven't got your own bees. So the rhubarb is all chopped up in the bowl. It looks like a lot, but it will cook down. And I quite like a deep amount of rhubarb. There's nothing worse than not having a lot of fruit. I've actually got some manky old blood oranges that are a little bit almost past it, so perfect for this rather than throwing them away. They wouldn't be good enough to necessarily eat, but perfectly good for putting in with another dish. So I actually think, I thought I was going to need two, but I think one will be enough. So you just pour the juice over. It just gives it a little bit of a flavour. If you've never had orange with rhubarb before, it is actually really, really lovely. I do a rhubarb jam and I put orange zest and orange juice in it, and it's actually really amazing. And also drizzle some honey over. Again, put the amount to your liking. Don't forget you're going to have quite a sweet topping of a crumble, which is going to add more sugar to it. And then if it's still too tart, you could of course have some custard with it or some ice cream. So there we go. That's the rhubarb. I'm going to pop that in the oven for about half an hour to soften it up. It doesn't have to be completely cooked through, because don't forget you are going to cook it a little bit more when you put the crumble on the top. So I'm going to mark that for half an hour, and I will probably give it a stir halfway through if I remember, but if I don't, it doesn't really matter. So let's move on to making the crumble topping while the rhubarb is in the oven cooking. So again, I'm using the recipe from the Jamie Oliver book, but I've adapted it slightly. First of all, I've got 100 grams of plain flour, which I'm popping in my food mixer. And they're going to put 100 grams of butter in, and I cut it up a little bit with a knife into little bits because it just makes it easier to process. Now, if you haven't got a food processor, you would then just rub the flour and the butter together with your fingertips to make fine breadcrumbs. So if you haven't got a food mixer, it's fine. You would just do it by hand. And if you were doing it by hand, make sure your hands are cold. So run your hands and your wrists under a cold tap to make them colder, because it just makes a better mixture if you do that. So just cutting it into little bits, doesn't have to be too precise. So when I put the lid on, I'm just going to whisk this together for a few seconds, and it will produce like a breadcrumb recipe. So that's good enough for me. That's fine breadcrumbs there. So next we put in 100 grams of brown sugar. Now I always use demerara sugar because it makes the crumble crunchier. This is a top tip I got from my brother-in-law. It's absolutely fantastic. And I've put a little bit of crystallised stem ginger in there, about 4 chunks, which I've cut up a little bit again like I did with the butter. So just put that in there. And then pour the oats in as well, and then you just mix it together. So I've got 200 grams of oats and 100 grams of demerara sugar and 4 chunks of the crystallised ginger. And then just mix it. And this part, if you didn't have a food mixer, you would just spoon it around with a big spoon. So just trying to mix it up, and you would cut the little bits of ginger up a little bit more. But because I've got the blade in there, it's going to break my ginger up a little bit more. And that's it. That's my crumble topping. So So the rhubarb is now cooked. So we're just going to put the crumble on the top. So just spoon it on and lift that off. There's more crumble here than I probably need. Now I'll either keep it in a container in the fridge or I will freeze it for another day. Just sprinkle it over the top. And again, the amount of crumble you have on the top, it's all down to choice here. Some people like a lot of crumble, some people not so much. So you put the thickness on that you want. Another top tip, a little bit more maybe. Another top tip is to sprinkle a little bit of demerara sugar on the top again because it makes it really tasty. Much nicer. Like so. And I'm going to pop that in the oven for about 20 minutes or half an hour just to cook the crumble. So the crumble's had 20 minutes. So let's get it out and see what it looks like. Oh wow, yes, that's definitely cooked. We have juices seeping over the top, which means it's going to be extra yummy. So that would be perfect with some custard, cream or ice cream, whatever you prefer. So I'd be interested to see how you all get on with that and really like to hear from you in the comments.